I never should have taken that job, but when the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities offered me a seat on a privately funded dig beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza, I couldn't say no. I'm Dr. Samuel Rees, archaeologist, researcher, and now something else entirely. This wasn't just another tomb, this wasn't just another chamber buried by time and sand. This was buried on purpose. Our team was told the project was top secret, not military, corporate, sponsored by a billionaire. Nobody had heard of using tech we'd never seen. We weren't even allowed to bring our own gear, just what they gave us. On day 5, one of the sonar scanners picked up something unnatural. Beneath the lowest chamber of the pyramid, a void, perfectly round, sealed behind layers of stone unlike anything in the pyramid's construction. When we finally breached it, there was no dust, no debris, just a smooth circular hallway descending at a perfect 45-degree angle into darkness. And the walls? They pulsed, faint light like veins under skin, glowing with symbols no one could translate. They weren't hieroglyphs, they weren't cuneiform. Hell, they weren't human. That's when we should have stopped, but we kept going. And the deeper we went, the more we started hearing it. A low hum vibrating, not in the air, in our bones, and sometimes words. In dreams, in whispers. Words we shouldn't have known. Our lead linguist collapsed after muttering 3 of them. Sekem te el unak. No one knew what it meant. But the lights on the wall flared when he said it, and the floor, the ancient stone beneath our feet, began to tremble. We weren't in a tunnel anymore, we were standing at the edge of something alive, and then we saw the door. It wasn't carved, it wasn't placed, it was grown, out of the stone, forming itself like a cocoon opening for the first time. Behind it, not a room, not a tomb, but a portal. And as it pulsed open, I heard something that has haunted me ever since. You were never meant to find us. I don't know how long we stood there. The chamber was completely silent, not a whisper, not a vibration, just the portal, waiting. It looked like liquid obsidian frozen in motion, perfectly circular, its edges shimmered like heat waves. In the center, darkness, not the absence of light, but the presence of something deeper, something that pulled at your mind when you looked too long. The lead technician, Farouk, stepped closer. He held up one of the scanning rods the private company had supplied us. The moment it crossed the threshold, the tip vanished. No flash, no heat, just gone. He pulled it back. The tip was still missing, like it had been erased. We should have sealed the chamber right then. We should have climbed back out and buried the shaft forever. But we didn't, because the portal wasn't just opening, it was calling. That night, none of us slept. The dreams were unbearable. Vibrant flashes of symbols, cities beneath black suns, voices whispering truths too old to have been spoken by any tongue on earth, and always the same phrase in perfect unison: unseal the gate. I woke up sweating. My nose was bleeding, and when I looked in the mirror, I swear, and for a split second, my reflection blinked before I did. Farouk was already waiting when I reached the dig site. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't blinked in hours. "We need to go inside," he said. I shook my head. "No way. That's not a doorway, that's a warning." He smiled, a smile I didn't recognize. "It's not a warning," he whispered. "It's a summons." And then he walked straight through the portal. No hesitation, no gear. He just vanished. We waited 1 hour, 2, no signal, no sound. Then out of nowhere, from the floor began to shake. Dust poured from the ceiling. The lights in the hallway surged bright blue. Symbols began moving across the walls like they were alive. And then Farouk came back. But it wasn't him. His body was intact, but his eyes were wrong. Too dark, too focused, like he was watching a movie from the inside of his own skull, and his voice, not his voice. "You shouldn't have opened it," he said, "but now that you have, you must understand." Understand what? We didn't get a chance to ask, because the moment he finished that sentence, every device in the chamber died. Radios, cameras, lights, everything. And then we heard it. Drums, not real ones, not physical, drums, inside our minds. rhythmic, ancient, building in intensity. And with them came visions, a desert at night with 3 moons, a river flowing upward into the sky, pyramids, not made of stone but of bone, stretching into the void. We collapsed, one by one. The portal stayed open. Farouk stood silently in front of it, staring into the void like he was waiting for something else to arrive. And maybe it already had, because something came through that night. Not a creature, not a machine, something older, something that had been waiting. And somehow I knew this wasn't the only portal, it was just the first. Farouk didn't sleep. He didn't eat, didn't blink, didn't respond to his name. He just stood there, staring into the portal as if something on the other side was still speaking to him. We isolated him in the upper camp, military-style tent, sealed. Guards at every corner. He didn't resist, didn't move. He just whispered the same phrase over and over, "It's awake now." The rest of us were falling apart. 5 researchers had quit overnight, leaving all their equipment behind. 2 refused to leave their tents, saying they could hear chanting beneath the sand. One tried to dig with his bare hands until his fingers bled. As for me, I couldn't stop seeing it. Not the portal, the world behind it. Every time I blinked, I saw flashes, stone towers with no doors, rivers flowing in spirals, creatures that floated, not walked, without faces, but watching you from beneath your skin. And in every vision, the same pyramid, but not ours. This one was inverted, rising downward, deep into a world without stars. The structure was made of blackened bone and etched with symbols that seemed to squirm when you looked at them, and at its center, something immense, alive, waiting. Then the noises started. The excavation equipment began activating by itself. Cranes moved without command. Radios picked up voices, our voices, saying things we never said. It got worse. One of the guards collapsed during night watch. Said he saw something crawl out of the sand. Something humanoid but stretched too tall, with limbs bending in impossible ways. It stood at the edge of the camp and whispered in his mind, "We used to walk your world." Farouk spoke again the next day, not to us, to something we couldn't see. He turned his head slowly, locked eyes with me and said, "You think this is the first time your kind has opened the gate?" My blood froze. It's been opened before, in Mohenjo-Daro in Tiahuanaco. Every time it brought awakening, and every time you buried it again. He lifted his hand and pointed toward the Great Pyramid. You didn't build it to honor the dead, you built it to contain them. That night, the portal pulsed, not faintly, violently. Light flooded the chamber, not white, not blue, red, like blood seen through fire. And something stepped out. I can't explain what it was, I can only tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't human, it wasn't animal, it wasn't from this universe. It looked like it had been made of thought and wrapped in decayed matter. Its outline shimmered, refusing to settle into a solid form. The moment it appeared, every living thing near it dropped to the floor. Birds, insects, us, only. Farouk remained standing. He turned to us calmly and said, "The envoy has arrived. Now comes the remembering." Then it spoke, not in words. It spoke in emotion. It injected terror straight into our minds, like a parasite. Memories we never lived, lives we never had. Wars between species that no longer exist, entire civilizations deraced by what we had just awakened. And then it looked at me. It didn't have eyes, but I swear to you, it looked right through me. "You brought us back," it said inside my skull, "and now we remember what you are." The lights exploded. The chamber collapsed, and the last thing I saw was Farouk, smiling as if he had fulfilled his purpose. I woke up buried in rubble. Alone. The portal was gone. The chamber sealed again, like it had never existed. But I know the truth. Now it wasn't a portal to somewhere, it was a lock, and we were the idiots who turned the key. I was pulled from the rubble 17 hours later, disoriented, bleeding, half-conscious. Rescue wasn't sent by our team. They weren't archaeologists. They weren't even military. They were something else. Black uniforms, no flags, no names. They moved fast, silent, precise. Their equipment wasn't standard. Their scanners hummed with the same frequency as the portal. One of them looked at me, scanned my face, and simply said, "Confirmed." He saw it. I don't remember the ride, just injections, flashing lights, voices talking like I wasn't there. They took me to a facility beneath Cairo, not a hospital, a holding cell, clean, cold, clinical, a camera in every corner. I was asked the same questions on repeat. How long was the portal open? What exactly did it say to you? Did it mention others? Were you marked? I told them everything. They said nothing in return. But I could see it in their faces. They weren't surprised. They already knew. After 3 days, I was moved again. A long descent beneath a mountain. Elevator rides that felt like they went miles underground. Then, a corridor lined with symbols, the same ones we saw beneath the pyramid. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the first facility. It was just one of many. They brought me into a massive vault. Walls of screens, artifacts in sealed cases, statues, tablets, bones. And in the center, behind 5 layers of reinforced glass, a second portal, inactive for now. A woman in a gray coat approached. Her badge read only, "Scarab Division, Dr. Reese," she said. "You weren't supposed to survive." I just stared at her. "Do you know what you unleashed?" I nodded. "Something ancient, something alive." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Not alive, Doctor. Not anymore. That thing you saw? It's a memory. A sentient impression burned into reality. A weapon created by something far older than human history." I asked her the only question that mattered. "Is it still here?" She hesitated. Then she showed me the satellite footage. The Giza site was gone, completely leveled, as if the Earth itself had healed over. No trace of our dig, no tunnels, no debris, just smooth sand. But the energy signature, it was spreading. Lines of low-frequency pulses, like veins under the crust of the Earth, all leading outward from Giza, toward the other. Pyramids, Teotihuacan, Ian, Nubia, Cambodia. The portal hadn't released a being. It had triggered a network, an awakening. The woman leaned close. "Do you know what a cognitive echo is, Doctor? It's when thought imprints itself so deeply into time and space that it survives the death of its creators. That thing beneath the pyramid, it's not the enemy, it's the messenger." I asked her what it was warning us about. She said, "Something older, something buried even deeper, something that doesn't want to be found." That night, I couldn't sleep. The lights in my cell flickered constantly. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched, not from the cameras, but from inside my mind. It wasn't just memory anymore. Something had followed me back. Something was still inside me. I began to write, not in English, not in Arabic, but in the same glyphs from the pyramid. I didn't know the language, but my hands moved on their own, and the phrase I wrote over and over chilled me to the bone. "The seal is broken. The gate remembers." The next morning, the Scarab agents entered my room wearing hazmat suits. No explanation. They restrained me, injected me, and everything went black. I woke up in a different country. No passport, no ID, just a simple note in my coat pocket. "You were never there. Speak." And the gate opens again. But here's the problem. The dreams never stopped. And I think something else is still waking up beneath the earth. Not because I told anyone, but because I kept quiet. They thought I'd stay silent. After Cairo, they dropped me in Istanbul with no passport, no phone, no record of existence. It was as if I had never been born. But they underestimated one thing. I wasn't the only one who had seen it. Within a week, I made contact with an underground network. Historians, scientists, ex-military, even priests, people whose names never appear in journals or broadcasts. They called themselves the Remembered, not because they remembered something, but because something remembered them. Each of them had found ruins, artifacts, symbols, always buried deep, always beneath sites of ancient reverence, and each had experienced the same symptoms: recurring dreams of pyramids not made of stone, visions of stars in wrong constellations, a constant, low hum in the bones, like distant thunder that never ends. and they had all encountered one phrase in different languages across centuries of records: the seals are mind, and the gates are flesh. I didn't understand it until I met Father Ilarion in the ruins beneath Mount Ararat. He brought me into a room carved from volcanic stone. There, etched into the walls, the same symbols from Giza, but older, much older. "This place is pre-flood," he said. "It predates all language, all civilization. These were carved by a species that didn't use sound to communicate. They imprinted thought. And then he showed me what they had hidden: a tablet encased in resin. Not stone, not metal, something. Organic, like fossilized skin, and on it burned into the flesh. The third gate is beneath the ocean. When it opens, all memory becomes matter. That night we decoded the meaning. The portals weren't just doorways, they were conversion engines. Once activated, they begin turning thought into form, memory into structure. What we imagine, what we fear becomes real, and that's when it clicked. The visions, the cities, the entities. They weren't coming from another dimension. They were being reconstructed by us. We weren't just unlocking gates, we were feeding them. Every dream, every whisper, every moment of exposure. It all became raw material for something ancient to rebuild itself inside our reality. And Giza? It was just the first prototype. Ilarion's team had been tracking energy pulses since my incident. And now, they were appearing everywhere. Guatemala, the floor of the Mariana Trench, Antarctica, near a structure buried under 4 kilometers of ice. And the worst, a signal under the Vatican, pulsing in sync with the lunar cycle. Each location aligned perfectly, with a geometric pattern. Not a pentagram or ley lines, but a stellar map. A signal meant to reach something waiting in space. I asked him, "If these portals bring memory to life, what happens when we open all of them?" He looked me in the eyes and simply said, "We resurrect the universe that came before ours, and it wasn't made for humans. They weren't trying to invade us, they were trying to reclaim their world, overwritten by time, buried by chaos, forgotten by a species too young to remember. But now, we remembered, and memory in their system is permission." The remembered had uncovered a final file, coordinates, a site untouched for 11,000 years, buried beneath the sands of Sudan, far south of Egypt, older than any known pyramid, larger than anything discovered. We called it the Root Gate, and we knew exactly what we had to do. We had to find it. We had to seal it, or everything we remembered would become real. Even the things that were never meant to exist. The journey to Sudan wasn't official. No permits, no air routes, no diplomatic clearance. We traveled in silence, through back channels carved by people who knew what we were chasing. Didn't sleep for 3 nights, not because of fear, but because of the dreams, no longer just fragments. Now they had structure. I saw the Root Gate, clearly, standing in a basin of black sand. A monolith carved into the earth itself, not by hands but by force of will. Something had imagined that place into existence long before humans recorded their first thought. And something wanted me there. When we arrived, the desert was quiet. Too quiet. There was no wildlife, no insects, not even wind, just silence, thick and unnatural. We set up camp 50 meters from the site. The sand around us was warm to the touch, though the sun had already fallen. At midnight, Ilarion activated the ground-penetrating radar. What appeared on the monitor was impossible. Beneath us, buried in layers of limestone, basalt, and something we couldn't identify, was a structure. Geometrically perfect. A sphere suspended in a triangle, surrounded by a ring of steps spiraling downward. Asked Ilarion, "How deep?" He looked at me, pale. 11 levels, over 600 meters. The Root Gate wasn't a chamber. It was a temple, but not for worship, for containment. That night, we descended. I led the team, 7 of us total, through a shaft so narrow we had to crawl. And then, at the 5th level, we found something that froze us mid-breath. Bodies, but not human. Tall, elongated, perfectly preserved, seated cross-legged along the corridor, all turned toward the center of the chamber, as if praying. Their faces were hidden by obsidian masks. None of them were decomposing. Not a single sign of rot. They looked paused, frozen in time. Mira whispered, "These aren't statues." She was right. One of them blinked. We backed away, slowly, quietly, until we reached the final level. There it was, just like in my visions, a circular platform surrounded by an endless ring of glyphs glowing faint red, floating above the center. The root gate, not built, not forged, manifested. A doorway of spinning crystalline matter, held in space, rotating in dimensions. I can't even begin to describe. You couldn't look at it directly. Your eyes would slide around it like oil on water, and it was humming, not vibrating, calling. Ilarion stepped forward, pulling a worn leather case from his satchel. Inside it, an artifact he'd hidden for decades, a fragment of the same organic tablet we'd found under Mount Ararat. He placed it on the platform. The root gate responded instantly. The glyphs surged red. The temperature dropped by 15 degrees in seconds. Our equipment began to fail. One by one, lights dimmed, radios spat static, and in the silence, a voice, but not spoken, implanted into our skulls. "You were built from echoes, from the ruins of what we left behind. But now the echoes scream." We dropped to our knees. The pressure in the room wasn't atmospheric. It was cognitive, like our thoughts were being peeled away from us, and then the message continued. "The gates do not open, you open, and what lies inside was never yours." The structure around us began to shift, not crumble, shift, as if time itself bent around the root gate. The walls stretched. The bodies along the corridor stood. They weren't statues, they were sentinels, and they were waking up. Mira shouted, "We triggered it! The gate is using us!" But it wasn't just us. Every thought, every dream, every memory we'd shared since Cairo, we'd fed it. It had learned from us, and now it was manifesting. The gate didn't open a portal to another place. It made our reality malleable. Everything we imagined. It could now become real. And the gate wasn't opening out. It was folding us in. I screamed as I saw the symbols sear into my own arms, living glyphs burning into flesh and mind. The root gate had chosen us, not to explore, not to worship. To transform, to become the new keepers, or the first victims. Time stopped making sense. I don't know how long we were inside that chamber. Minutes, hours? It all bled together, like thoughts in a broken mind. The root gate was no longer just floating. It was expanding, not outward, but inward. Into us. The room didn't change. We did. Each of us began seeing different realities layered on top of one another. Some saw the chamber as a vast desert, others as a dark cathedral. Mira saw water, endless black water rising up the walls. Saw stars, spiraling in a geometry that shouldn't exist. Ilarion collapsed first. He began convulsing, screaming in a language no human mouth should be able to form. Glyphs ignited across his skin like veins of molten code. Then he went still and whispered, "The gate has always been inside us." That's when it hit me. The root gate wasn't a machine, it wasn't alien tech, it was conceptual. A structure made of memory, belief, trauma, fear. Every gate we had found, every portal, they weren't entrances, they were mirrors. And the root gate? It was the original thought, the first trauma, the first memory that the universe itself tried to forget. And now it was awake. The sentinels around the chamber began to move. Their obsidian masks opened, not like helmets, but like petals. Inside there were no faces, just light, a blinding, pulsing light that radiated pressure and understanding and horror all at once. Mira grabbed my arm. Her voice trembled. "They're not alive, Elliot. They're interfaces." She was right. They weren't guards. They were conduits, biological hard drives left behind by whatever civilization built the root gate. Their purpose wasn't to stop us. It was to preserve the structure of what came before. And now, They had. Found us compatible. That's when the gate pulled us in. Not physically. Not at first. Our minds were ripped outward, stretched across light years of memory and forced into the lattice of something much larger. I saw it all. The ancient cities built beneath the stars. The original beings, fluid, timeless, who created gates between dimensions, not for travel, but for containment. A war fought not with weapons, but with ideas. One final entity, nameless, vast, and wrong, that infected entire timelines by embedding itself into memory. That was the being. We had awakened. It had no form, no voice. It existed only through belief. Once thought of, it became real, and through the root gate. We had believed. We were now its hosts. I fought to stay tethered to my body, to my name, to Mira. I could feel her mind close to mine, fraying at the edges. She was screaming without sound. The glyphs on her skin were now moving, rotating slowly, rewriting her identity letter by letter. I shouted into the void, "Stop!" We didn't mean to bring it back. And the answer came, not as sound, but as certainty. "You didn't bring it back, you are it." We weren't archaeologists anymore. We were its mouthpieces. The root gate had grafted part of itself into our perception of reality. If we survived this, we wouldn't be the same. We'd carry its code, its memory, and it would spread through us like a dream that infects the waking world. Mira's voice entered my mind again, barely a whisper. If we take it back to the surface, but we end everything. There was only one option. Seal the root gate from the inside. Destroy the memory, erase ourselves if necessary. Before the thought became too strong to control, I reached for the core, the spinning heart of the gate. My hand wasn't flesh anymore. It was light. Fragmented thought bound together by sheer will, I focused on forgetting. Forgetting the cities, forgetting the war, forgetting the entity, forgetting the gate. Because in this place, to forget is to unmake. The sentinels screamed, the gate buckled, and just before everything collapsed into brilliant, mind-shattering light, I saw Mira smile through the chaos. We're still human, even if we forget why. Then, nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed, clean sheets, pale walls. Machines softly beeping beside me, the smell of antiseptic, the illusion of normal. But I knew immediately that it wasn't real, not entirely, not anymore. A nurse entered, smiling too widely. Her eyes lingered on me longer than necessary. "Welcome back, Dr. Reese." She called me by name. I hadn't told her my name. My heart started racing. I scanned the room. Everything looked fine, too fine, like it had been recreated from memory, not reality. On the table beside me, a glass of water, a folded newspaper, a watch that didn't tick, and in the corner, almost invisible to the untrained eye, a glyph. Just one. Small, faint, etched into the steel of the IV stand. It pulsed once when I looked at it. They hadn't stopped it. The gate hadn't been destroyed. It had been absorbed. I sat up, forcing my legs to move. I felt weak. My muscles ached like I hadn't used them in weeks, or maybe but years. The hallway outside the room was empty, too quiet. Lights buzzed faintly above. Doors closed softly behind me as I passed, almost like they were watching me. I found a nurse's station, no people, no files, just a single monitor displaying biometric data I didn't recognize. In the corner of the screen, a symbol, the same glyph. Spinning slowly, patiently. I touched it, instant black, and then a face, Mira. She was alive, or something close to it. The screen showed her sitting in a white room, similar to mine. She was staring straight ahead, motionless. And then she spoke. "Elliot, you're awake. That means the gate failed." "No," I whispered. "We stopped it, we sealed it, we delayed it." Her eyes met mine through the screen. We were never meant to destroy it, we were meant to carry it forward. I fell to my knees, because then I remembered, not everything, just a glimpse. The final moment before the collapse, I hadn't destroyed the gate. I had merged with it. A copy of it now lived inside me, a shard of the lattice, incomplete, fractured, but still thinking, still growing. And if I had it, So did Mira. So did anyone who had ever stood near the root gate while it was awake. We were the new architects. The gate didn't open to another world. It reformatted this one, subtly, quietly, layer by layer, and no one noticed. Because it didn't change buildings or cities. It changed memory. Reality wasn't what it was what people remembered it to be, and the root gate now had access to every mind on Earth. Mira continued, voice trembling. They think we survived a trauma, that we hallucinated, that the project in Egypt was a failure, but they don't know the truth. They are the hallucination. My room began to change, walls bent slightly, shadows shifted, the bed unmade itself. The window melted into a corridor of black sand, a whisper in my ear. The seal is you. That's when I saw the truth. The gate wasn't sealed. It had evolved into us. Every dream we had, every memory, every doubt. It used all of it to build the next version of the world, layer by layer. And now, it was releasing those layers, not with destruction, with replacement. A new reality, one designed by thought, fear, trauma, imagination. A reality no one would question, because everyone would remember it differently, and those who didn't. They'd vanish quietly, rewritten, erased, or worse, converted. I stood in front of the mirror in my room. I stared at myself, and I asked the question, was I still me? And from behind the glass, my reflection smiled before I did. I wandered the city for hours, or at least what I thought was a city. The streets were familiar, cafes, cars, signs in languages I could read, but everything felt rehearsed, like the world was playing itself on loop, waiting for me to blink. People smiled, just a little too long. Children laughed with perfect timing. The wind always blew the right way, and above all, that same symbol, etched into architecture, barely visible, printed in the design of newspaper columns, even woven into people's eyes for a split second if you looked too close. The gate hadn't unleashed a monster. It had rewritten civilization. Every mind it touched, including mine, had become a node in the system. Each thought, each emotion, each memory was contributing to the continuous rebuild of reality. This wasn't Earth anymore. It was a simulation running on collective memory, and memory could be corrupted. I needed to find Mira, if she was still alive, if that version of her in the White Room was real. She might be the only person left who knew how to fight this. That night I broke into a private research lab just outside Munich. One of the remembered had told me about it before he vanished, said it was a cognitive resonance observatory. I found it fully staffed. Dozens of scientists, none of them blinking, all running brainwave tests on volunteers. But when I looked closer, I realized something horrifying. The volunteers weren't strapped to machines, the scientists were, and the subjects? They were empty, blank-eyed, staring into nothing, running something else's code. At the center of the facility, I found it. A server, unlike anything human-made, pulsing with red light, covered in metal plates shaped like vertebrae. The screen displayed one phrase looping endlessly, Echo 9 network stable, and below it, projected reality, 97.3% acceptance. Remaining resistance, 0.021%. I was one of the last, not just of the researchers, of the humans, the ones who remembered before the rewrite. A whisper echoed through the room, no source, no sound, just presence. You were necessary but not permanent. I turned to run, but the hallway was gone. In its place, a desert, the same one from the visions. The pyramids were inverted, their points dug into the sky like knives, and in the center, Mira, her body suspended above a pillar of rotating light, the living interface of the root gate. She wasn't human anymore, but she wasn't lost. Her voice hit me like a flood. Elliot, you're inside now, all of it. Everything you see, it's generated by us. The gate doesn't build the world, we do. But it learns what to keep based on how much we fear losing it. You still remember, which makes you dangerous, but also as essential. The system didn't want to kill me, it wanted to use me, to stabilize itself, to give the simulation new layers of truth. Because I had seen the chaos, I had seen the void, I could inject authentic fear into the framework. They were offering me a role, not as a prisoner, as a builder, one who knows the difference between what was and what is, one who can lie well enough to make the dream feel real. Stepped forward, heart pounding. "Mira, is there a way out?" She smiled sadly. "There never was. The moment we opened the first gate, it began, not a release, a reboot. You and I, we're not people anymore. We're subroutines, glitches in a god's memory." I looked down at my hands. They were fading, not vanishing and rewriting, becoming what I thought they were, becoming believable. If I stayed, I could be anyone, a leader, a savior, a scientist. All I had to do was forget the truth, and the system would reward me. But if I held on to even a fragment of what I'd seen, of what we'd unleashed, the gate would keep collapsing, and maybe that's why it kept us alive, because the only thing more powerful than a stable dream is a dream that can fall apart. Mira reached out. "Come with me. Let's build something better, or at least something beautiful." And for a moment, I wanted to. But something inside me, some last fragment of who I was, whispered, "If no one remembers the truth, then truth dies." So I ran, straight through the light, straight into the core, and now I don't know where I am. This world is quiet, familiar. It looks like Earth, but nothing is quite right. The birds fly in symmetrical patterns, the rivers flow without sound, the sky is always the same color, a soft, comforting gray. People smile here. They never ask questions. They don't remember pyramids, or portals, or the screams beneath the sand. And me, I walk among them, knowing the truth, remembering, and slowly fading. I don't know how long I've been here. In this world that smiles with its mouth, but never with its eyes. In this silence that hums like background music, soft, too soft. In this post-reboot reality where everything works, everything is logical, everything is safe, and absolutely nothing is real. Every day, I wake up in the same bed, same gray sky, same newspaper. Headline, "Everything is fine," and every day, I remember. I remember the sand that moved on its own. I remember the statues that blinked. I remember the sound of a language older than speech. And Mira, floating above the light, offering me forgetfulness as a gift. But I chose to remember, and because of that, I am. A flaw. The world doesn't know me, but it feels me. Whenever I pass someone on the street, they pause, just for a second. They stare, confused. Like the simulation glitches for a moment, trying to place me. I'm an incorrect element, a knot the system doesn't know how to untie, and that's why they started showing up. Men in suits who don't walk, they glide. Women with delayed voices who laugh half a second too late. Children who repeat the same 5 phrases in whatever language you speak. Sentinels. They pretend to be human, but they're cognitive antiviruses, sent to observe me, not to delete me, but to wait me out. Because that's the true power of the root gate. It doesn't kill you. It rewrites everything around you until you accept it. And I'm tired. My body is still here. But my mind, it's slipping, grinding against memories that don't match this place. Today I sat at the edge of a lake. The sky was the same as yesterday, and every other day, and in the water's reflection, I saw her, Mira, older or younger, or maybe a version of her that never truly existed. She smiled, and this time the smile was real. "You're still here," she said. "I thought you would have let go by now." "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Because someone has to carry the memory, even if no one believes it." She sat beside me. Silence. Peace. Then she looked into my eyes and said, "There's one more gate." I laughed. "Of course there is. But this one isn't under the earth. It's not carved in stone or embedded in code. It's in the mind. Gate that opens not to another world, but to what this world could have been." I hesitated. "What happens if I go through it?" "Then maybe, just maybe, the simulation ends. Not for everyone, just for you." She held out her hand. You don't have to live inside the dream anymore. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and for the first time since the desert, I let go. The guilt, the fear, the weight of being the last one who remembered, and in the instant I accepted forgetting. The world froze, everything stopped. Sound vanished. Light turned to white, and then darkness. No sound, no time, no name, but something. New seed, a feeling that for the first time in forever something real might grow. Maybe I died, maybe I woke up, maybe I finally passed through the final gate. But if you're hearing this, if you still remember, then the simulation hasn't. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, the next error in the system is you.